So Blizzard nerfed Necromancer into the ground. However, I might have the build that can kind of save Necromancer and alleviate at least somewhat of the damage loss that it has. And this build does a lot. It has a lot of AoE damage, it has slows, it has a lot of sustainability, it even has a CC mechanic if you get a certain item, and it still makes use of some of the prior abilities while also adding a ton of damage fortify, and yes, it gets rid of those pesky minions for now. What's up, world streamer? Back in another video, and we're checking out all things Diablo 4. Okay, so I might have the Necromancer build for you, and yes, you do have to get rid of the minions, or well, you can keep them if you want. I just think they get in the way at this point, and I really do hope that Blizzard does buff the minions, as this is what Necromancer is supposed to be about, so it is kind of unfortunate they've nerfed them so harshly, so hopefully we can get them to kind of readjust that and at least bring the minions back up to speed. But let's just get on into the build, and we'll go ahead and we'll refund everything real quickly. Okay, so with everything refunded, we're going to go into, now I know a lot of people like to take Decompose. And the reason why people like to take Decompose is because it generates those corpses. However, there's multiple reasons why I don't like Decompose, and I'll explain those very, very quickly. And the reason is if you break the Decompose chain at all with this 2.5 seconds, it doesn't add up. So you can't just do 1.5 seconds, then 1 second, and then a corpse will spawn. It's not how that works. In fact, you have to hold it for the whole 2.5 seconds. And I noticed that because of bone spears and other things and other abilities that you can use, it will break pretty fast. So you probably shouldn't go that route, at least in my opinion. I don't like it, although it is better off on some bosses. However, then again, bosses are always moving around and such, so my go-to, and even with last beta, was Hemorrhage. And I like it because it adds Fortify, it has a ton of healing effects with the blood orbs. There's a bunch of things there that's really fun to use. So I'll go into Hemorrhage just one. We'll take this first ability, and then we'll grab our Fortify. Now, there also is another ability here where you can take attack speed. If you want attack speed, you can do that. However, I do think the Fortify is worth it. So next up, we'll jump in over here, and we're going to take Bone Spear. Bone Spear is going to be our bread and butter for everything. It is just really, really powerful. It was really powerful last beta. It's powerful this beta. So we'll go into everything here. Again, we'll go into our first ability here, which is to break into 3 shards. And this ability here with the vulnerable, where it makes the first enemy hit vulnerable, there's too many times where you're AoEing, so I don't really like this one for that. So I do go down here. Now, there is actually a legendary that I'll show you later on that kind of alleviates this ability even more, so you really don't need it. So we're going to go ahead and take this one. Now that we've come down to here, we can either hop into, if you want, Blood Mist for the kind of CC ability, or CC breaker rather, and so we'll go ahead and take it, although I don't know if that should be a priority for you. In fact, I would go Corpse Explosion. Now, we do have an item that gives us Corpse Explosion for now, but we'll go ahead and go into it so that you can see that. And you should have this item. I'm pretty sure everybody, I think it's an amulet, or no, I think it was on the amulet itself. Yeah, +1 to corpse. So you will still have Corpse Explosion if you beat the campaign, but this just showcases if you don't. Now, we will go into the Corpse Explosion for Radius. Down here at this Plague Corpse Explosion, this vulnerability, it's good for certain cases, but honestly, 8% to me, that's a lot, but at the same time, it's only for Corpse Explosion, and you have to have the enemy slowed or vulnerable. So I'm going to go into Blighted Corpse Explosion, and the reason why is I really do think Darkness skill is going to scale really well with come launch. These builds are kind of more so like to help you at level 15 and then kind of on after that point. Now, these builds can change a ton after that, so we don't know exactly if the builds will change that much, but for now we'll go ahead and take Blighted Corpse Explosion because I really do think this is going to be really good on launch. Now, after this point, we can either we'll probably go into Bone Spear to get another point there so that we can keep up with the damage, and then as you're coming into here, there is 2 abilities here that we can look at. One being this Iron Maiden, and if you're struggling with damage, go ahead and go back into Bone Spear and these 2 and kind of go back and forth. Although, I'll tell you what we're going to do with Corpse Explosion, so don't put too many into Corpse Explosion just yet. So if you want, you can put it into Bone Spear, but for now, we'll come down into Iron Maiden. Now, I think a lot of builds, I haven't really looked at other builds, but I think a lot of builds take Decrepify, or at least I've heard that in chat and stuff like that. I like Iron Maiden because of this ability here, where Iron Maiden no longer costs any essence at all, so you gain 5 essences every enemy that stacks. So this is now our regen ability. I'm pretty sure Corpse Explosion used to have a regen ability where every time you used the corpse, it would regen your essence. There is no more of that unless that was a legendary. So we need another essence generator, in my opinion, especially for Bone Spear, and so Iron Maiden is going to be that. Now, we're going to skip out on these 2, as I really don't think these are that much needed. Iron Maiden doesn't do a lot of damage, and if they do hit us, then it will do certain damage to them. Whereas you could have the mitigation here with that, but it's more so we're just getting these enemies cursed and so that way they take more damage. And it's also a resource generator. You'll see how the build plays out in a sec. Okay, so now with these two here, we do have our Iron Maiden, everything ready to go. Now, there is another ability here that you can go into, but we'll go ahead and we'll just take the rest into Bone Spear. We'll get all 5 Bone Spear. It's a really strong ability. You might as well take it. Now, I have an item that gives me Corpse Tendrils. If you want to take it, you can. It's kind of a nice ability. It pulls the mobs inward and kind of like stuns them. It's actually pretty good, and I'm sure some people probably won't take this for their build, but it is a cool ability if you have the space for it. Now, with everything else out of the way, there isn't really too much here that we can play around with. There's some stuff here with like damaging enemies closer and farther. I think it's too much of an edge case with that stuff. So because we took a curse ability, I go all 3 into here, which is going to give us a nice 9% increased damage to curse enemies. So when you're cursing a bunch of enemies in a row in a big circle here, it's going to give you that nice increased damage. And then we'll go ahead and we'll slap our last one into Corpse Explosion. Again, you could take 2 of 3 out of this and then go into your Tendril if you really wanted it, or anything else here. Now, there are like some stuff here with the shadow damage, but there's it's a wasted ability here with movement speed. I don't think it's good, so I just skip all that. We go right in here. We're going to take everything that's all damage. Now I'll go ahead and showcase this build to you really quickly. Now, to go over Book of the Dead really quickly, we are going to take increased shadow damage, which is really going to help with our shadow damage ability on our Corpse Explosion. You could always go 5% here. I don't think the physical is that much needed. And then for our skeleton mages, we would rather, in my opinion, I'd rather go here for maximum essence. There is the vulnerable thing here, which again, I have a legendary that does stuff with vulnerable stuff. You could go into that, but I wouldn't. Okay, so let's go into here, and now really realistically, you kind of want to curse enemies off the bat, and you could spam this. This thing uses 0 essence, which is actually really nice. So as long as you're having that like up or be able to be used, it's actually really nice. I'm gonna kind of get a little here, and as you can kind of see, then we'll get our Corpse Explosion off, which is doing a lot of shadow damage here. Again, we'll get that curse on them, and you could kind of do it midway through. So if the mobs, you know, maybe like half HP, that way you can use it as the resource generator. Because if you already curse them, you cannot recurse them and get more essence. It doesn't work that way. So you have to do it the first time. Again, Necro is in a pretty rough spot, but I do think that this build is pretty good. So we'll go ahead and curse everything. We'll get everything down. We'll get a nice little thing here. We really don't take any damage at all. You can see how long this shadow stuff is lasting for. It's actually kind of insane how long the shadow damage is there for. But again, this is just mostly just trying to save Necro from being almost seemingly bottom tier for damage. Although it does seem really fun to use and play around with the Corpse Explosion. And so I do think that this build is overall decent and will at least make up for it. And you don't have to deal with all the minion stuff, so at least you don't have to deal with respawning the back end and all the tediousness. But that does about cover for today's video. And if you like, I'd like to subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.